What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best Galvanic Shards Mercenary build in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of the setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the mid game and end game. And then finally we will go over the passive tree, attributes, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you're looking for this build on the website, then click my link in this video's description or the pinned comment. This setup's main focus is built around the Galvanic Shards and the Shockbuster rounds, that both act as the shotgun skills, which as you can see from the gameplay can melt a ton of enemies in split seconds. This is currently for sure the best mercenary build in the game, as not only you can do massive amounts of damage, but also in the endgame with decent enough gear you can reach about 15,000 shield, which will turn you into an unstoppable melting machine. Our playstyle is built around the shock and the chain lightning, as Galvanic Shards have an amazing clear speed, coming from the chains and the forks. Then the shock burst rounds have an insane single target damage, but will require shock, so that's why we consistently use the Stormcaller arrow, to get that crazy AoE buff and much more. If you want to use the crossbow as a shotgun and destroy enemies in seconds, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Mercenary, and our Ascendancy is the Witch Hunter. Then for the first skill we have the Galvanic Shards with support gem called the Martial Tempo, Fork, Primal Armament and Long Shot. Then second we got the Shockbuster rounds with concentrated effect, Lightning Infusion, Heft and Elemental Focus. Then next we got the Stormcaller arrow with the Conduction, Fast Forward, Overcharge and the Lightning Exposure. Next we have the Emergency Reload with Ingenuity and Premeditation. Next up we have the Herald of the Thunder with Vitality, Cannibalism and Inner Weight. Next we got the Cast on Shock with Voltaic Mark, Conductivity, Persistence and Impetus. Then for one of the last ones we have the Ripfire Ballista with Font of Rage, Font of Blood and Ancestral Urgency. And finally for the last one we are using the Sorcery Ward with Lightning Mastery, Fire Mastery and the Cold Mastery. Most of this setup is structured around using the Galvanic Shards and the Shock Burst rounds to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next we also have a leveling build in case if you are starting your journey from level 0 and you want to use it up until about level 25, where you should start getting our most important skills. So first off we have the high velocity rounds with the double barrel and the scatter shot. Then next we have the explosive grenade with the scatter shot and the fast forward. Then third we got the flash grenade with the overpower. And finally we're using the gas grenade with the corrosion. This is your basic setup up until you get our build's two most important skills. In the early stages of progression we're using the high velocity rounds and explosive grenade as our main ability combo, as they're very powerful especially at the beginning. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this armor and evasion node, then go like this until we get a battle hardened, feel no pain and the hard to kill. Next we want to keep moving forwards and get this whole thing, as well as this quick change act. Next up we want to go all the way to the end, and now move to the right and get both these lightning nodes called the Lightning Rod and the Flash Storm. Next up we want to circle back a little, and this time go to the left, all the way to here until we get to the Resolute technique. And this keystone is very important, which I will explain in just a second. And then from here we can go back all the way from where we left off, and then just keep going right, and from this point just unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, just simply you want to fulfill your attribute requirements for gear and skill gems, and then after that spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Obsessive Rituals, then next get Ceremonial Abolition, then third we want the Zealous Inquisition, and then finally we want to go with the Pitiless Killer. In PoE 2 earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be very smart not to spend your points recklessly. Of course, you can refund your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you are following this build, then make sure to not to deviate from it, as some of the decisions that I made might not make sense at first, but is going to pay off later. So feel free to use the exact same path as I have right here. And don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the tree. Next up we have the Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our mercenary build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit of points into the farming boss maps or the essences. So when we start, we wanna first of all get to the bottom left side like this. Then from here we go until we get all the way to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then next we get back to the middle and this time take the top right side and get all of these passives. And then when all of these are done, then now we go again back to the middle, and this time take the middle path and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forlorn Crossbow, with crit and weapon speed. Our main goal here is to get a high DPS or hybrid physical and lightning damage setup. Also, a fast attack speed and low reload time is important as well. And for bonus stats we want physical damage, lightning damage, attack speed, life per enemy hit, and plus levels to all projectile skills. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Shielded Helm, with armor and evasion. And for bonus stats we got increased armor and evasion, then even more armor, even more evasion, and max life. Then for chest we have the Expert Scale Mail with the armor and evasion. And for bonuses we want increased armor and evasion, even more evasion rating, and max life. Then for the belt we have the Plate Belt with a lot of armor and max life. As I mentioned at the beginning, we can get up to 15,000 armor. And as we are using the leather bound gauntlets node, that gives us even more evasion per every single armor stat, so this is incredibly useful for our build. Then for the gloves we got the Expert Molded Mitts with armor, and for more we need even more increased armor, max life, and increased attack speed. Then for boots we're using the Expert Stack Sabotons with the armor and evasion. And for more we got increased movement speed, max life, and increased armor and evasion. Then for our first ring we got the Death Rush. The main goal here is to find rings with added lightning damage, or if not, then physical damage is also fine. However, this one is not mandatory, and you can choose other rings as well. But if you're looking for the best one in the slot, then this one for sure is the best, as it gives us insane amount of evasion and accuracy. Then also 5% life leech, and we also gain onslaught after every kill. While on the second one we have the Amethyst ring with chaos resistance, and for more we want lightning damage and max life. And then finally for the amulet we got the Lapis amulet with intelligence, and for more we want spirit, armor, max life, even more chaos resistances, and plus levels to all projectile skills. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Then next we have runes. During early item progression, most gear is socketed with resistant runes, like the Desert Rune, Glacial Rune, or the Storm Rune. However, once your elemental resistances have been capped, and elemental resistances are no longer necessary, then you want to opt in to increase your maximum life with body runes or consider socketing a soul core. So on our weapon we are using the Iron Rune. Then on the helmet we have the Glacial Rune, and then lastly on the rest of our equipment we are using the Storm Rune. And as far as getting this gear goes, by far the best way to get better gear in the campaign is to check the vendor in the town each time you level up, as vendors can change their offerings based on your level, so this is the best way to find upgrades. And then after level 65, you just wanna keep continuing repeating your maps until tier 16. And again, for more in-depth tutorial, check out my gearing guide video. Then on top of this, we need to quickly look into the charms. Charms are incredibly useful, as by having the right one equipped at the right time can save you from dying. If you are struggling with certain bosses, then look into what damage type they are using, and then use that specific charm to increase your resistance. For me personally, I like to use the Stone Charm for stuns, because if we get stuck then we die. Then second, we want the Amethyst Charm for chaos damage, as it is pretty hard to get it from other places. And then finally, for the last one, we want to go with the Ruby Charm. But as I said, which one you choose will entirely depend on the enemies that you are fighting, so feel free to experiment and mix and match. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will give you two distinct rotations. So one for mapping / AoV mob farming, and then the second one for bosses. So first up we have our AoV rotation, and for most weak enemies you can just simply use the galvanic shards by themselves, and it will already destroy 99% of the most enemies. However, if you run into a big stronger pack, then we again start with the galvanic shards to proc them, but then afterwards use the shock burst rounds and blast them down even further. And then finally, if they're very tanky, then you can also use the emergency reload for bigger damage boost, but this will really depend on each situation separately. Or then for the second one we got our boss rotation, and this time we want to use the Stormcaller arrow to start proccing our shock. Then next we want to use the shock burst rounds with the emergency reload, and this combo should completely obliterate any monster. And then lastly we can also use the Ripfire Ballista before the boss spawns to get some extra free rage, but again this is very optional. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, then you definitely don't want to miss my top 3 best builds video, where I showed even more powerful builds. So click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.